Back when I was younger, I was a lefty. I believed Australia should be taking in as many asylum seekers and refugees as we could. And I also believed in having all government services provided for free at the expense of the taxpayer. Imagine a world where we could take from multi-millionaires and give the money to the poor. We would never have to work again. And if we did work, it would be to build a better world. I remember thinking to myself, capitalism is greedy and only serves corporations. Being left-wing doesn't always mean that you're an idealist or naive, but it does mean that your beliefs stem from the idea of a classless society where everyone is equal and that humanitarianism comes before economic benefit. Most people in the world would agree with that notion, that this is noble and something to be sought after. But when it's put into practice, it has always been corrupted and wasn't real communism or real socialism. When we examine communism and socialism being implemented in society, we can see that more often than not, the people's standards of living are much, much lower than that of a capitalist society. This is often based around the distribution of wealth being either equal amongst all people or being state provided. When we have an economy that is based around workers manufacturing items to be sold for the benefit of the state, with no actual tangible or visible reward for their efforts, people will naturally become apathetic to their job and the state. People need to see results from their efforts, or they will not see any point. People don't naturally work for their collective, they work for themselves and their family. This is why communism and socialism has never and will never work. The only way this has ever worked has either been through totalitarian rule or through the threat of violence by the government and the people. Forcing an ideology through violence and threats, this notion is almost emblematic of the left's problem today. They believe in a utopian world where economics doesn't exist, border security is unnecessary, and a place where everyone is equal, well, unless you're a white male, whether you like it or not. And if you disagree, then you are just a Nazi, bigot, xenophobe, fascist, sexist, homophobe, Islamophobe, Trump-loving racist. They will say anything to shut you up. But this isn't because the left are evil or idiots. They honestly believe that they are the good fighting the evil right-wingers. They think that we all hate people based on race or religion or sexual orientation, whether we admit it or not. I have little sympathy for the left, as it takes a pretty young and closed mind to see the world in such a black and white way. In this day and age of information, you can literally access thousands of books, articles, and essays about what it is to be right-wing, and the basis for the ideals in which the right usually hold, such as strict immigration, Judeo-Christian legislation, the right to bear arms, and a less regulated economy. The right are not evil, and nor are the left. But when we are pitted against each other in times of economic and political turbulence, we get the rise of the evil left and the evil right. They promise a revolution through violence for a better world or a utopia. These civilizations never work, and they will always lead to the destruction of life, liberty, and justice. When I left school, I left as being left-wing. I attended university and attended my first protest to demonstrate against the deregulation of university tuition fees. In Australia, our government regulates the fees that universities charge their students in order to make universities more accessible to the public. Little did I understand the ramifications of accessible education and the drop in standards once they opened the floodgates to anyone who could afford the degree. I attended the protest along with 200 other students from different universities and campuses. Everything was good. We were chanting about ripping off students and creating more debt. And then someone brought in Aboriginal land rights into the protest, and then asylum seekers issues, and corporate tax hikes, and LGBTI feminist propaganda. It was safe to say that these kids had no idea how to stage a protest, and they began to drift off into a leftist oblivion. I left the protest and I never attended another one in my entire university career. Once you expose terrible arguments and a lack of understanding, their argument becomes weak and their reputation as people who know what they're talking about is tarnished. This is why it's important to have a reform of the left, and this is why I left the left. It was after that I noticed Marxism was rampant throughout my university campus. There were posters, demonstrations, lectures, and even a Marxist club. I was pretty hard-pressed to find a straight white male Christian club, but you bet your ass there was an African lesbian rock climbing groups ready and available. Everything was divided into identity politics, and was ultimately segregated. My lecturers were also in the hive mind of Marxism, applauding essays decrying the plight of asylum seekers, and bashing essays addressing issues such as men's rights. Men's rights isn't even a right-wing concept. It's just a human rights issue. But if it's got men, it's gotta be bad. The left cannot and will not survive. The Marxist ideology ignores basic economics and will always put feelings before rationality and fact. But I don't take that lightly, as it has invaded and plagued every institution of my government and council that I have in my country. The army, parliament, the media, and even our schools. Our civilization will not survive living under an ideology based on idealism and Marxism in an economy based on profit and capitalism. We need to stop raising idiots and start making economics mandatory reading for our students, or we're going to be dealing with adult daycare centers instead of thriving workplaces and a functioning economy.